Hello there. Welcome to section 8, which is looking much more closely at the emotion coaching process, steps 1 to 4. I will now upload my PowerPoint. Okay. So you'll remember that there are 4 steps to emotion coaching, and you'll also remember that you don't have to follow them in perfect sequential order because they will happen spontaneously as you work through what's happening with the child. So step 1 is about recognising and empathising. A very popular phrase is connect before you correct, which comes from Dan Siegel. Again, like I said before, worth a read. All his books are worth a read. They're very good. So step 1 is about authentically empathising with the child from their point of view. Doesn't mean agreeing with them, you just view it from their perspective. Recognising that all emotions are natural and normal and not always a matter of choice. Recognising behaviour as a communication. Looking for physical and verbal signs of the emotion being felt and taking on the child's perspective. You remember when we're in class and sometimes we use the phrase choice, like, oh, is this a good choice or a bad choice that you did that? It's common language in schools. It kind of comes across as being a good idea to do, but when we think about what we know about an emotion coaching from this course and how our brain works, actually using that kind of language implies that the thinking brain is totally engaged, which actually, if they're dysregulated or moving on to being dysregulated, of course it isn't, because they're just reacting to the emotions. So there is a time and a place to use those words of choice. It's not always helpful, and if it's overused, then the message that the child gets is, I didn't make a choice, so it must be me, it must be something wrong with me and I must be bad. So be really careful about that kind of language if you use it, if you need to use it. Also look out for physical and non-verbal communication, pay attention and be curious to this because it can be part of a pattern. A common one is, for example, is coming back from break when they've been outside and they don't particularly like break because it's unstructured. And it's that lovely phrase, we need to be curious rather than furious. I'll say that again, we need to be curious rather than furious. And it's that relational emotion coaching style that's so important because it helps us to connect before we do any of the correction work. This slide is a guide, a mnemonic guide to step 1 of emotion coaching. It's designed to help us be prepared and attuned to and recognise children's feelings and empathise with them. So it's a nice structure. Again, could be made as a poster for the children and certainly the adults in school. STAR, so stop, don't think or act straight away. T is for think, what is going on for that child right now? What feeling may lay underneath the behaviours that I'm seeing? Attune yourself with that feeling by putting yourself in the child's shoes. And maybe reflect. What would be an equivalent situation for you that could cause you to feel that way? So stop, think, attune, reflect. So in responding empathetically to the child's emotions, the adult's response should help to trigger the vagus nerve responses and support the calming of the stress response system. And it's helpful for us as adults to identify a similar situation which parallels the one that the child's going through at that time. So when we discuss it with the child, we can see where they come from, and it's an authentic response rather than a forced response. Empathy can be dismissed as emotions that are not labelled or validated. So we've got to be careful there that we're actually following the process and we are being empathetic and attuned in an authentic manner. I'm just sharing this for you quickly. There are quite a lot of overlaps with conventional de-escalation approaches. I've chosen this pause approach, which is quite nice. I'm not going to go into any details about that, but there will be lots of different de-escalation approaches from things like team teaching, which are common approaches and good approaches in school. They're similar, aren't they? They're similar. So if we do very quickly pause, pay attention to my body, thoughts and feelings, assess what is activating me, understand the roots of my feelings, set boundaries, separate, ensure safety, and then empathise with those involved. Really, really similar kind of thing, almost script. But the difference is that with emotion coaching, we apply it systematically in as many situations as we possibly can. These kind of de-escalation strategies are often associated with diffusing a potential conflict, so are probably not often used frequently, whereas emotion coaching is used proactively, not reactively, proactively, so that all parties learn to apply it in time and can proactively regulate until it becomes habitual. Along with step one, step two helps the child to feel that they're not alone. You can see them and not just their behaviour, and you understand and care about their emotional distress. Labelling links to the research, which shows how labelling emotions can play a key role in helping us to calm and regulate our feelings. Or as Dan Siegel puts it, name it to tame it. Validation is the process of expressing acceptance of an emotional experience non-judgmentally, whilst not rejecting or ignoring what they're feeling. You communicate that you understand the feeling without talking them out or shaming them for having that feeling. Here are some examples of emotion coaching scripts, and we can actually see how it's all starting to hang together now. I can see that you get angry when that happens. I would feel that angry if that happened to me. I can see you're frowning and you're kicking the wall and you're expressing a lot of energy. I would be feeling like that too if I didn't want to do something. I've noticed you looking around at others who are working on their projects. I wonder if you might be feeling nervous right now about whether your work will be okay. Have I got that right? So just let's have a little bit of an activity. You can see these bears, sorry, they're slightly blurred, which is a shame. But pick a bear and I want you to label the bear's emotion, validate it, and guess why they might be feeling like that. Have a go at a couple for a couple of minutes. Okay. So it's just starting to get to practice labelling the emotion, validating it, and maybe making some guesses through questioning about why they might be feeling like that. Got some emotion words here for you to have a look at. You've already seen an emotion wheel and the secondary emotions, tertiary emotions, even that shows the full range. People can feel uncomfortable about labelling when they're using emotion coaching because they feel they might get it wrong. In reality, we are not often that far wrong, but you can always use a more generic word like upset or surprise or sad if you're getting stuck and children are going to correct you anyway. Let's have a little look at this little cartoon. So instead of denying the feeling, so let's listen to this not good example of Dad trying to deal with an upset daughter. My turtle is dead. He was alive this morning. Now don't get so upset, honey. Don't cry, it's only a turtle. Ah, stop that. I'll buy you another turtle. I don't want another turtle. Now you're being unreasonable. Compared to how it could have gone, when we empathise, validate and label. My turtle is dead. He was alive this morning. Oh no, what a shock. He was my friend. To lose a friend can really hurt. I taught him to do tricks. You two had lots of fun together. I fed him every day. You really cared about that turtle, didn't you? So the importance of steps 1 and 2, sensing, naming, identifying what is going on in the first step is the first step to recovery. So being able to hover calmly over our thoughts, feelings and emotions and later take our time to respond allows the executive brain to inhibit, organise and moderate hardwired autonomic reaction programmed into the emotional brain. And we've talked about this in the last section. Regulation can occur from the bottom up, i.e. use of breathing or touch, or top down, which is using your your thinking brain to, you often using a narrative to go to regulate, which is emotion coaching is very much along those kinds of lines. Step 3 is the bit about accepting limits, and I think this is where things get a bit confused. This step needs to have a positive focus, so it's not just explaining what is not acceptable, but it's an opportunity to explain what is expected or acceptable. E.g., when you want to go on the computer, you need to put your name on the list and wait. Then you'll be able to go. Is a nice positively phrased, neutrally phrased kind of instruction. Sometimes there's a mistake made with emotion coaching that's being kind and loving all of the time, which is actually the kind of laissez-faire parenting style that we talked about, or teaching style that we talked about. It really isn't, and it really shouldn't be. It's about being realistic over the fact that children do need boundaries and expectations are there to be met. Being relational is not about laughing off wrongdoing, such as a child sitting there swearing at the top of my head and people being nice and relational and saying, oh, will you stop that, please, Sam? It's not very helpful. It's about being really clear that that is not what we expect in this classroom. And it's not acceptable behaviour. It's having expectations is about coaching the necessary life skills to regulate, but recognising when to regulate. Because actually, if no one says, well, no, it's not very good to swear at the top of your voice for half an hour in the classroom, then you're not going to know that it's not actually acceptable behaviour. You're not going to be able to do anything about it. You're also not going to be aware why the next teacher gets very upset when you do it all over again. So we do have to think about setting limits, and it's always important to retain that child's level of dignity. So you can say what you have to say in terms of the rules, like I've just said. When you want to go on the computer, you need to put your name on the list and wait, then you can have a go, without getting into some kind of blaming and shaming situation where the fat child feels foolish. So there are ways of problem solving with the child, and it's best to do this when the child has calmed down and is in a more relaxed rational state. So explore the feelings that gave rise to the problem in the first place, scaffold alternative ideas and actions, and empower the pupil to believe that they can overcome those. Can you think of a different way to deal with your feelings? I can help you think of a different way to deal with your feelings. Can you remember what we said before? And to put a bit more structure around it, here's some more questions. What does your body feel like now? What feelings are you having? Let's think of what we could have done instead. What might your friend do or suggest to you? And you can also problem solve using restorative approaches. What happened? What were you thinking at the time? What you're feeling at the time? Who's been affected and how? What needs to happen now to put it right, and more formal problem-solving approaches such as what's the problem, what could I do? Let's make a list of what might happen with each solution, pick the preferred solution, do it, and then did it work? Obviously, this needs to be the choice of which kind of approach you want to use needs to be age appropriate and ability dependent and contingent on the ongoing relationship with the child you're working with. I've tried to download this but can't because my work computer blocks this out. But if you do get a chance, have a look. If you can download it on your own computers, have a little look at these vignettes. They're quite entertaining. It took me quite a while to work out who was acting as the parent and who was acting as the child. But one of them is actually a lovely example of emotion coaching in action. It's well done, and it is one of those situations where the child, who actually turns out to be the blonde lady is the child who's extremely irate, and you can see how things work. And it's that thing about being an emotion detective. You might have heard that phrase before. Being an emotion detective, what the feelings of the daughter and the mother, and notice how the mother responds in each clip, and choose for yourself which you think is closest to emotion coaching. Okay, we've just got to the end of this section now, and the next section, it will be the final section. I do hoping I'm making lots of sense so far. So the next section will just finish it off for us. And of course, because it's all these sections are pre-recorded, you can watch them over and over again until actually you've got the points clear in each section, so you can actually apply emotion coaching. Okay, let's see you in section 9.